Today is December 18th, and now all the critics and insiders, celebrities, and overall Disney shills have seen The Rise of Skywalker, and now we get to enjoy the big shit show that is Episode 9 of the Disney trilogy. Let's put everything in perspective. Note that the new movies cost considerably more to make, and the other key here is that Rise of Skywalker needs to make $1.33 billion, or it's going to be officially claimed a failure. $1.33 billion is what they're looking for. They need to make or break that number. I don't think that it's going to make $1 billion. That's just my opinion. So far, what we've seen, it's not going to make $1 billion. So let's first recap a few things, and I'll get into the reviews and everyone's opinions of this movie. Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker, Knights of Ren exclusive image. This was 28th of September 2019. So the first thing to point out here is there's an exclusive image here of the Knights of Ren. The Knights of Ren, it was a big deal that Kylo is the master of the Knights of Ren, and we saw a quick glimpse of them in The Force Awakens. Well, in The Rise of Skywalker, they have all of 1 minute of screen time, and they do pretty much nothing. They're a lost opportunity and do nothing in the film. So that was a big hoopla and waste of time that never came to fruition. J.J. Abrams. I never found myself trying to repair anything, he tells Empire. If I had done 8, I would have done things differently, just as Rian would have done things differently if he had done 7. But having worked on television series, I was accustomed to creating stories and characters that then were run by other people. If you're willing to walk away from the thing that you created and you believe it's in trustworthy hands, you have to accept that some of the decisions being made are not going to be the same that you would make. And if you come back into it, you have to honor what's been done. JJ is claiming that he didn't try to fix anything and that he accepts what Rian did and that he would have done the same. November 25, 2019. J.J. Abrams opens up about finishing The Rise of Skywalker and what he really thinks of Baby Yoda. I know you just finished the movie as of last night, but has anyone seen the finished product yet? Oh yeah. Sure. I mean, the final? No. I mean, the truth is, I have not even gotten to see the final product. So in his own sentence, he catches himself. Oh yeah, I've seen it. Well, no, actually, I haven't even seen it. You talked about how you were surprised by Rian Johnson's constant subversion of expectation in The Last Jedi. From your perspective, what was it like following the movie and what he changed to the narrative? And how did that change your approach to making The Rise of Skywalker? There were some choices that made things a bit more fun for us. Because, for example, Rian didn't have the whole group collaborative adventure of it together. And that was really fun to get to tell the story of the group, the droids, out on one breakneck, crazy, desperate adventure. You know, the choices that he made for me were, as a fan, as a reader of the script, a fan of his, a fan of Star Wars. It was just fun to read someone's take that was so about surprising the viewer, and it was really entertaining, because it was. It got to surprise me nearly every time. So I loved it for that. As a filmmaker working on Episode 9, amazingly, nothing that he did in Last Jedi got in the way of things that we talked about wanting to do down the line. Ideas that I had about where things might go. So it wasn't like the story somehow derailed the things I wanted to pursue. In fact, strangely, they might have helped strengthen them because we got to make some choices that sort of take advantage of the fact that Rian hadn't done the things that we were thinking about doing. He's saying that he didn't have to repair anything and that he's excited and it's funny that Rian went off and did something totally different, and it was even better because we got to do other things. Esquire goes on to say, over the last couple of years, The Last Jedi came out. I've been writing a lot about the response to that movie and some of the toxic fandom around Star Wars in the new era. Fans that love a franchise and we open our mouths about being displeased and we're toxic. I think the bigger question is, how has everything changed? The reaction to Star Wars, the increased attacks, the increased negativity, the fandom menace, as they call it. You know, that is not unique to Star Wars, obviously. So JJ is very aware of the fandom menace. Now, the point here to remember, A, he wasn't repairing anything. B, that he is applauding Rian for his work and that it didn't get in the way and it helped push the new movie and it was all fun. It was all funny. Star Wars, Kathleen Kennedy on the long road to ending the Skywalker story. 6th of December, 2019. Gizmodo. When you made The Force Awakens, obviously there was some discussion about where this could all go. Rian Johnson then came in and took the story in his direction. And now J.J. Abrams is back to finish everything up. Looking back, was there a reason why the beats of the entire trilogy weren't cemented around episode 7? And has that lack of structure been a benefit in retrospect? Kathleen Kennedy. Well, first of all, when we sat down to do The Force Awakens, we spent a great deal of time working out all 3 movies and doing a real deep dive on the previous 6 and talking about that, understanding the mythology that George Lucas had created, bringing in people who had worked on those films, been a part of Lucasfilm. We brought in 2 or 3 different writers. There were 8 of us usually sitting in that room and whiteboarding what the possibilities are and looking at character arcs, identifying, because George had already gone to Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, and Mark Hamill to do the film. So we knew that was a given, that we're bringing them back into the trilogy and we're introducing new characters, so we had a sense of where this was going. So according to Kathleen, they had a plan. They had a sense of where this was going. They already had at least some thought as to where 7, 8, and 9 were going to go. So you say cemented? I don't think anything's ever cemented with Star Wars. It can't be. It's so rich with possibility that you don't want to reach a point where you think you've made a decision and then not leave yourself open to exploring other possibilities and other considerations. And when you get a lot of smart people in the room who are all Star Wars fans, that's never going to stop. And I've certainly found in the 7 years now that we've been doing that that's what makes this so fun. As we add people to the family and those voices become important voices to the creative process. All filmmakers are somewhat pliable. A good filmmaker is going to be flexible and go with the flow and adapt and be able to expound and expand their story. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you're dealing with the biggest franchise in history that has 42 years of history and lore, and you are Disney that spent $4.05 billion to acquire this IP, yes, you sit down and you cement a whole plan for the 3 movies. You don't just willy-nilly this thing, as they did. And Kathleen is always making excuses and flip-flopping, saying that, oh yeah, we had it all planned. We knew the Emperor was coming and we were going to do this and we had a plan. And yet they always are changing things. They obviously did not have a plan. And Ian McDiarmid himself said that just a year ago, JJ contacted him about the Emperor. Don't lie to us and say that you had a plan and knew where this was going when just a year ago you didn't know what you were going to do because Rian went and fucked it all up by killing Snoke.
It's a total surprise when about a year ago, yeah, it was that long, I had an email from JJ saying, is there a good time to call you? And where should I call you? So I emailed back to such and such a time, and this is the best phone number to get me on. And then he called me straight away and said, we're thinking of bringing back the Emperor. How do you feel?
I am all the I'm all the Jedi.
Question for JJ and Kathleen. Lucas has entrusted you with 7 to 9, and in the very first script that Lucas has written, of course, all the world loves the authorship of George Lucas and the world that he created. There was the mythic growling that was written in the script, and I think, Kathleen, you once did away, or you didn't accept the first script that came, and because Lucas had written some parts of this saga, and also he's written a book. And would it be part of the Star Wars canon in the future?
Well, actually, George Lucas never wrote a script for 7, 8, or 9. And the ideas that I think you're referencing are ideas that he had for other possible movies.
I have story treatments of 7, 8, and 9 and a bunch of other movies, and obviously we have hundreds of books and comics and everything you could possibly imagine.
She's like, I don't think this is just about him.
You see how they talk. They always leave this open gap. Well, it's not really cemented. We can always change and adapt. So I just wanted to remind you guys of that. We'll give you a refresher as we go into now the reviews. 6 hours ago, again, today is December 18th, Daisy Ridley wanted to cry in her car after watching The Rise of Skywalker for the first time. Now, I know a lot of you are going to interpret that as she was so elated and so proud, and it was such an emotional moment. It was the end of this trilogy with her new friends and JJ, and she's Rey, the Whammon, and it's so emotional and important, and she just broke down and cried. I'm not a negative person, but the way that I interpret that is that she saw the movie and realized, holy shit, we really did kill Luke Skywalker. We just erased Darth Vader, all the history, all the canon, all the movies are destroyed. I am on the big screen claiming that I'm every Jedi, and I just vaporized the Emperor, who was already dead and now came back again. We've destroyed the entire Star Wars franchise, and I'm the face of that entire dismantling of the most important films in history. So you can interpret this as you like, but I'm a realist, and I've seen what Disney has done to Star Wars, and I interpret this that she was so ashamed and so embarrassed that she had to run to her car to go cry. We all sort of sat around a bit stunned, and then I was trying to scurry off into the car to cry, and producer Michelle Rejwan and screenwriter Chris Terrio were like, no, go on. I was like, I don't want to cry in front of you. I just want to get in the car. Okay, so she had just seen the end of the film. She wasn't celebrating with her cast and crew and mates, and they weren't all cheering and amazed. We all sort of sat around a bit stunned, and then she wanted to run to her car to cry. Never in episode 1 through 6 did the cast say, oh my God, we were so stunned and we all had to separate and run away and go cry in our cars. This is shame. She realized what had happened. She realized that she's the face of this disgrace, and she had to go to the car and gather herself because she knew that this shitstorm is coming, and it's only the premiere. The general public hasn't even seen this film, and I'm about to show you how bad it's being received. The face of disgrace. Daisy Ridley, Rey Skywalker, or should I say Palpatine. Yahoo Movies, December 18th, 2019. Reviews are in for Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker, and it's not looking pretty. December 18th, 2019. New Star Wars reaping worst reviews since Phantom Menace. Bloomberg, Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker is on track to be one of the worst reviewed films in the 9-picture saga. Commentators who found the film underwhelming pointed to a number of problems. It answered some of the same questions and themes of past movies. According to the British Broadcasting Corp's Nicholas Barber, it was dull. According to Joshua Rothkopf of Time Out, and Entertainment Weekly's Darren Franich called it a zombie. December 18th, 2019, Forbes, one of the biggest shills and supporters of Disney and The Last Jedi. Review, Rise of Skywalker is the worst Star Wars movie ever by Scott Mendelson. The Rise of Skywalker is a bad movie and a miserable finale that serves no purpose other than to reassure adult fans of the original Star Wars that they are still the chosen ones of the pop culture galaxy. Alas, J.J. Abrams and Chris Terrio's Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker is just a genuinely bad movie, one that repeats the fatal mistakes of the likes of Spectre, Spider-Man 3, and The Crimes of Grindelwald, to end the Skywalker saga on an all-time low. The problem with Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker isn't just that it absolutely walks back a number of potent reveals and plot threads from the last movie, but rather that the 142-minute action fantasy spends almost its entire running time retconning its predecessor and adding painfully conventional plot twists and patronizing reversals in the name of mollifying the fans who merely want to be reminded of the first 3 movies. It manages additional damage to the legacy of the 6 Star Wars movies. It undermines the previous 2 episodes in the name of giving some but not all original trilogy Star Wars fans a reassuring pat on the head. It even shies away from Force Awakens' darker real-world implications. It is so concerned with character reveals and chase the MacGuffin plotting that it finds no time for any real character work. First, Kathleen is saying that we had a plan. We knew where it was going. Then Rian comes in and he did his bold stuff. And then JJ's claiming, no, I didn't have to fix anything. It was fine. It was fun. And as you can see, one of the toughest critics, or better said, supporters of Disney's dumpster fire is sitting here telling you that it's reversals and retconning its predecessor. Things start promisingly enough with a grim and visually dazzling sequence. For the record, the whole movie looks great, where none of us doubted that. We knew that it's ILM, it's Disney 2019, the movie's gonna look good. We've never said that any of these Disney trilogies look bad. The problem is the story and the characters that we don't give a damn about. Where Kylo Ren, Adam Driver, doing what he can to sell some awful dialogue and plotting, kills his way to the location of a still living Sheev Palpatine. The former Emperor promises command of countless newly created warships as long as Ren ends the Jedi Order by killing Rey. Okay, fine, the Emperor's back, but at least that reveal is done right off the bat. The next sequence, involving multiple jumps to lightspeed, plays out like Star Tours ride. But once we find ourselves back in the new home of the Fractured Resistance, well, you have huge chunks of plot that are written and edited around deleted scenes of the late Carrie Fisher. That's when things start to implode. The Resistance immediately gets word that Palpatine is both alive and has raised a world-killing army of super ships, news that everyone takes pretty well. I guess it's only slightly disconcerting that, metaphorically speaking, Hitler is still alive 35 years after World War II and is planning on teaming up with the USSR to try to enslave the world again. We then jump into a go to the place and find the thing adventure. Alas, absent memorable dialogue and much in the way of honest interaction, plus 2 extraneous new characters seemingly meant to no homo, Finn and Poe, the journey becomes about the destination. The destination is merely more arbitrary plot reveals. Last Jedi's "it's not your franchise anymore" metaphors aimed at a generation that grew up loving Star Wars and then allowed 2 Palpatine-ish leaders, W. Bush and Trump, to come into power for a generic, don't worry, Star Wars is still the best fan bait. It's that this express purpose is the only reason the movie exists. It is focused on plot over character and is written with, we got to stop that laser intelligence of a bad Saturday morning cartoon. When there already exists some very good kid-targeted Star Wars tunes, one cannot escape the fact that Rise of Skywalker has turned the entire new Star Wars trilogy from a kid's franchise into one aimed at nostalgic adults yearning for a time when they believed they were the most important generation. Adam Driver does his best trying to sell this nonsense, and there's a momentary glance when he unexpectedly finds himself with a weapon that has more charm and character than any number of applause now, introductions, or fan-friendly callbacks. The film continually teases status quo altering events and then immediately walks them back, offers generic action where even the seemingly emotional showdowns are interrupted by digressions and part-tense exposition, and gives Daisy Ridley essentially no real arc of her own. The screenplay never forces her to make any hard choices or live with the consequences of her mistakes. stakes. The plot is shockingly similar to Frozen 2, but even that film, as random as its narrative seemed, prioritized character and emotional honesty over plot, which is why it resonated despite the story issues. Finn, Poe, and Rey are mostly action figures moved into place as the plot demands. The Rise of Skywalker is possibly worse than any prior Star Wars episode. It retroactively ends a legendary franchise with a thud, while denying the new trilogy its artistic reason for existence. It represents the cultural theft of Star Wars from today's kids by today's arrested development-stricken adults. Star Wars was a franchise first and foremost for children, and the kids who grew up with Harry Potter, the Hunger Games, and the MCU have embraced harsh truths and challenging narratives. Lucasfilm and Disney's The Rise of Skywalker feels explicitly crafted for the Rian Johnson ruined Star Wars, and George Lucas raped my childhood demographics, right down to its near erasure of Kelly Marie Tran's Rose Tico. It's bad enough that adults no longer see grown-up movies in theaters, but now yesterday's geeks who have taken over pop culture feel entitled to have the kid-friendly franchises aimed at them as well. Thank you, Scott Mendelson, for finally telling the truth. The Guardian, December 18th, 2019. Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker review. Death is not the end in new trilogy's laborious exit. 3 of 5 stars. Letterboxd.com. Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker. 3.2 of 5 stars. IMDb.com. User reviews. 1 of 10 stars. Movie by committee. This was written yesterday. This isn't George Lucas's vision of Star Wars. Neither is it some talented and visionary director's vision of Star Wars. This isn't even a high-budgeted and dedicated fan movie. This is basically just a movie made by a committee. A movie made by a corporation, trying to pander and please as many demographics as possible. Like, we need to have 50% men, 50% women in the movie. We need to have 25% Asians, 25 Africans, 25% Hispanics, and 25% Caucasians, who of course mostly should be evil. There needs to be 27% action, 23% humor, 15% suspense, 18% romance, 19% nostalgia, etc. We need to get the old fans back, and we need to lure the new and young ones in. We need to introduce a certain amount of new cute and cool creatures, characters, weapons, and vehicles that can be sold as toys and put on merchandise, which basically means the movie is a big fat 0%. 1 star of 10. Absolute colossal fail. All the leaks were true. It is a colossal failure. You thought The Last Jedi was bad? Well, guess what? This is a perfect follow-up to the horror of a movie that is The Last Jedi. It gaps the plot holes that The Last Jedi created wide open. It's equally as bad as The Last Jedi, at many moments even worse. If I didn't know J.J. Abrams wrote the movie with help of another writer, I would have sworn the dialogues were written by a 12-year-old. So poor, so unimaginative, and utterly ridiculous at times. 1 of 10 stars. Retcon this crap. Stop blaming Rian Johnson, everyone. It's all on J.J. Abrams. The Force Awakens was already a disaster. Just one good scene when Rey cooked some food in the beginning. Nothing good could have come from it, and nothing came from it. The Last Jedi and now The Rise of Skywalker are hollow, empty, meaningless comedies, which I can accept from Marvel movies and have a good time, but not for Star Wars. I say retcon this crap and redo episodes 7 through 9 completely with a story from George Lucas and directed by Joss Whedon or Robert Zemeckis. I agree 1000% that from The Force Awakens, it was a disaster. The second I saw Force Awakens, it was confirmed to me personally, in my opinion, that Star Wars was done. I also agree that we, as the fans, simply ignore the Disney trilogy as they have ignored us, the fans, and it doesn't exist. It's not canon. It just simply does not even exist. We cannot acknowledge it. We cannot support it. It does not exist. Redo this whole thing with George Lucas's outline and start fresh. I don't know that Disney will ever humble themselves to do so. I don't know if by some miracle Disney gets sued or loses so much money that somehow Lucas regains control. But as far as this Star Wars fan is concerned, episodes 7 through 9 do not exist. Star Wars finished at episode 6, and that's that. Disney is non-existent, and this trilogy is non-existent. 2 stars of 10. Don't pay to see it if you already know how it ends. The Resistance wins, and the First Order loses. Palpatine comes back only to be killed off again by an unworthy protagonist. It would have been better if he won. He's more deserving of it after surviving Return of the Jedi. 1 of 10 stars. Crap from Disney. After the 3 first movies of the saga by George Lucas on the latest 70s, A New Hope, and the 80s, The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, everything got ruined. But when Disney bought the rights to George Lucas, the Star Wars universe was totally guttered and dismembered. Maybe new generations would like it, but it's so feminist and with a huge political message that makes me puke. I'll stick with the first 3 movies made, and I'd consider that was all Star Wars for me. RogerEbert.com. I was waiting all morning for this one. I was very curious what this was going to say. Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. 2.5 of 3 stars. December 18th. Came out this morning. If the mission fails, it was all for nothing. What we've done all this time. This may just be another inspirational line of dialogue from Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker, but I couldn't help thinking it defined the production of the film too. After the divisive response to Star Wars: The Last Jedi and the firing of the original director, Colin Trevorrow, J.J. Abrams swooped back in to make sure the mission of this franchise was for something. And you could feel the weight of history and obligation, especially in the first hour of Skywalker, as Abrams delivers a movie that practically lifts off directly from Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens, using that film's combination of action and fan service as storytelling template way more than the previous movie. However, the inherent rush that came in revisiting this world 4 years ago is naturally lessened, replaced by something closer to desperation. Whatever one thinks of The Last Jedi, if that film was trying to build a new house on familiar land, this one tears it down and goes back to an old blueprint. Some of the action is well executed, there are strong performances throughout, and one almost has to admire the brazenness of the weaponized nostalgia for the original trilogy. But feelings like joy and wonder are smothered by a movie that so desperately wants to please a fractured fan base that it doesn't bother with an identity of its own. And I want to remind you again, JJ said, I wasn't doing anything, I didn't have to repair anything, it was all fun. It was all great. And here clearly he had to retcon The Last Jedi. Now I'm not mad because The Last Jedi was trash. All of Disney Star Wars is trash. So I don't actually blame JJ. But they lie and say they had a plan. They did not. They lie and say, well, no, it's fine. I didn't have to change anything. And you're going to see that everybody's reviews of this movie is clearly stating that he had to spend the first half of the film retconning everything that The Last Jedi did. That this film should have been 2 films. It should have been episode 8 and 9. The first half is fixing Rhiann's mess. The dead speak. This is the opening line of the crawl of the last Star Wars movie in the new trilogy, and such an appropriate overture to a film that relies on your knowledge of dead characters to appreciate it. The dead in this case is Emperor Palpatine. The dead. He was dead in 1983, folks, who is revealed in the prologue to still be alive, planning a return of the Sith and the Empire. He's been underground on a distant, untrackable planet where he reportedly created Snoke, waiting for the heir to his throne to lead the resurrection of the Sith in the form of something new called the Final Order. Now, you see here, they did away with the Sith and the Empire and the Rebellion, but if you read the Bloodlines book, it explains how the First Order is really just the remnants of the Empire that went to the unknown zone and then built the First Order. So really the First Order is the Empire, and that the Resistance is Leia started it. Why? Because Disney wanted to erase the history and claim Star Wars for their own. So they started killing off characters and concepts to make everything their creation. Like we were going to forget the first 6 movies. Like, oh, Disney, wow, you made this amazing space fantasy. Thanks so much. But at the end of the day, the Empire is the First Order, and the Resistance is the Rebellion. And in this, they had no plan whatsoever for Palpatine. But then they got backed in the corner because Snoke got killed. So now they have to bring back Palpatine, which then means what? They have to bring back the Sith and the Empire. You see how they're all convoluted with their own story? They can't even keep their own canon straight, never mind Star Wars canon straight. The midsection of the movie is its most effective. after a clunky first act that's filled with way too many scenes of people talking about who they are, where they need to go, and what they need to do when they get there, the film finally settles into a groove with an excellent chase scene that somehow both echoes Return of the Jedi and Mad Max. Now, they have to explain all this stuff because they had 3 movies to develop these characters, and we know absolutely nothing about these characters. Thus, we have no care, involvement, investment in these characters. So now JJ is desperately, at the last moment, trying to get you to care about these characters. What's telling about The Rise of Skywalker is how much I would have rather just learned more about Poe's background or the story behind Zori than experience the numbing overkill of the final act of this trilogy. For those who get a chill down their spine at a familiar John Williams composition in just the right place, or even locations that this film returns to that you probably never thought you'd see again, The Rise of Skywalker offers just enough to make them happy. It's not unlike a roller coaster ride in that it's just enough thrills to satisfy fans, but you can also see exactly where the ride begins and ends before you strap in. Real movie magic comes with surprises and risk-taking, and those are undeniably absent here. I believe for the reason that people thought there was too much of both in the last film. I wanted more of Zori because she's one of the few characters or plot threads here that feels like it has potential to surprise. Almost everything else has been workshopped, focus grouped, and even Twitter hive mind to a fine paste. It's easy to digest, but not that filling or memorable. Perhaps the best in-movie self-criticism is in the fact that Kylo Ren rebuilds his destroyed mask. Why? No reason. Some fans of the series believe that The Last Jedi destroyed their favorite franchise, and here's J.J. Abrams literally picking up the broken pieces and putting them back together. And yet, as he's told, you can still see the cracks, meant as criticism of Kylo's uncertainty, but reflective of the movie too. Sometimes you can't just put things back together and revisit history in a way that doesn't feel craven and desperate. People will see the cracks. Again, JJ said he wasn't repairing anything, but just like Kylo's mask, he was trying to put all the pieces of this movie back together because he knew he was screwed. Metacritic, it is 5:45 p.m. Eastern Time. The Rise of Skywalker has a score of 53 out of 100. Let that sink in. 5:46 p.m. Eastern, December 18th. Rotten Tomatoes has a score of 59 out of 100 for The Rise of Skywalker. This was at 52% early this morning, and I have not seen it go over 60. This is Solo numbers. As a matter of fact, Solo started better than The Rise of Skywalker, and this is Rotten Tomatoes. So let's see what YouTubers have to say about The Rise of Skywalker.
Well, you guys, I wasn't able to buy the whole theater, but it turns out there's a lot of empty seats, so hopefully this thing's gonna bomb. I'm gonna go check it out. Oh, here we go. Oh, I feel sick. Oh, I feel queasy. Oh, stop the planet. I want to get off.
Tickets for Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker went on sale months ago, so you may have a hard time getting tickets this weekend.
Singing Shy's character,
Look.
he's amazing.
Opening night.
Hey, Greg? Before we leave for the movie, can I give you your Christmas present? Well, if you didn't like that present, I got you a backup. Okay, how about this one? What the f***, Greg?
Are there things in the movie that I thought were dumb? Yeah. Stupid,
There are
honestly.
stretches, for sure.
There's stuff that's not quite clear, and while it goes out of its way to answer a lot of things, there's also like a few things that are set up in this movie that are definitely not answered.
There are threads that just trail off, yeah.
Yeah.
What did you think of Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker?
You know, there were some things in it that I really, really did not like.
Yeah, I mean, even after seeing it twice, I'm pretty much, right in line with where I was the first time.
Yeah.
And it's that there are a whole lot of elements that I really like.
Yes.
But it's a messy movie.
Yeah.
It's a messy movie, and it also feels, and I know there's a whole bunch of people out there who aren't really big fans of The Last Jedi, but I do think no matter how you feel about The Last Jedi, the fact that this story feels so far removed from those events is kind of problematic, and I think it speaks to problems within Rise of Skywalker as a film all on its own, but also with the structure of the trilogy, and I don't really know the details of what went on behind the scenes, but after watching this concluding chapter, I suspect that none of it was planned out in advance, and it kind of, came to them as they went along.
Yes.
And I think that does hurt the overall arcs for almost every single character involved.
I agree with that statement. It's a little too ambitious.
There's a lot.
And
There's a lot in this.
It doesn't really succeed.
The structure of this is definitely all over the place, but we do need to touch on Leia's arc in the movie a little bit. It's hard not to notice a little bit of, manipulation with the footage that was left over. You can kind of, you see the seams there.
Is it the most satisfying conclusion for the character of Leia? No.
We have to give a score
I
out of 10.
know.
Do you want me to go first, or do you want the pressure?
Okay. I feel like my score is going to sound really low.
Okay.
Because my inclination is like 6 out of 10, maybe 6.5.
Yeah, I'm kind of right in line with you. I mean, I like to have like big round numbers, but I was debating between a 6 and a 7, and I got to go 6.5. I can't ignore the major structural issues in this. There are a couple of story choices too, where I don't know, certain things felt too easy, or things that were happening along the way were just dropped into characters'
There was
laps.
a lot of nice coincidences in this film.
A lot of things that like had stakes, and then all of a sudden had no stakes anymore. It was all erased, and I was getting a little frustrated by how often that was repeated.
I think it was especially frustrating because there were so many threads established early on that could have been so interesting, but instead they kind of made the safe choice.
Yeah.
And
I see that.
Not a lot of payoff.
The acting is probably the worst out of any of the Star Wars films up to this point, especially when the characters are just so hollow to the point of you just not caring. We already didn't care much about these characters. This is set about a year after the events of The Last Jedi. It feels like so much has happened and we aren't shown any of it. All this stuff is happening. As soon as the movie starts, you have all these things being thrown at you, including the opening crawl, which mentions one of the big leaks that happened from, not big leaks, but one of the big reveals that happened from Star Wars Celebration about one of the main characters, one of the main villains from the original trilogy coming back. All of that is revealed in the opening crawl. And the immediate thought process that I had was, if someone is trying to avoid spoilers for this film, including some of the things that have been revealed directly by Disney and by Lucasfilm, having that in the opening crawl, to me, kind of deflates everything going on behind the scenes. It really feels like there was a movie in here that needed to happen prior to this film in order for this film to make any sense, which says two things. One, that J.J. Abrams obviously had a lot of ideas in mind after The Force Awakens that Rian Johnson decided to not listen to, and two, that Disney Lucasfilm, and Kathleen Kennedy specifically, has no idea what she is doing. Obviously, any fans of the original Star Wars movies and any critics of Disney are not going to acknowledge this Disney trilogy as being a part of the official canon because it's such a train wreck. This is a film that is a giant mess. Even just looking back and talking about this film objectively, no one can say that this film is not a mess. Anyone who's going out of their way to say this is the greatest Star Wars film that's ever made, that this is the greatest film they've ever seen, is lying.
And Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. It's a flop. It's rotten. There you go. It seems people that liked The Last Jedi don't like this. It seems people that are kind of just overall not liking any of the Star Wars under Disney are now hating it as well. This is one of the worst performances for Star Wars since The Phantom Menace, which is quite crazy, to be perfectly honest. This is huge. This is genuinely huge. Not only are we seeing the tides turn on Disney with respect to the media, but we're also seeing the tides turn on Star Wars on a whole. And it fascinates me how they got it so wrong. How do you get it so wrong? Well, complete mismanagement. A lot of people will say that it's all to do with The Last Jedi, and that's partly to blame. But the overarching reason this has completely fallen apart is mismanagement. This is just the biggest, most monumental cluster ever. You've got things which were set up in Star Wars: The Force Awakens, which were just thrown to one side or explained away ultimately, so they go nowhere, and they can go nowhere unless you do a complete 180, which is what this film then has to do. And that all comes down to one person, Kathleen Kennedy, and the utter mismanagement of the Star Wars franchise under her guise, or, you know, it's just a joke, basically. So, like I say, this is the worst performing since The Phantom Menace. Bearing in mind, ladies and gents, bearing in mind, these people would have been invited by Disney. Disney is very careful with who they invite. Very careful. In fact, so much so that they will only invite people, generally speaking, that they firmly believe will provide good reviews. It's very difficult to provide a good review when your film utterly sucks.
There's no way to end the Skywalker saga and make all the fans happy, and Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker certainly isn't going to make all the fans happy. Those who love The Last Jedi will surely be peeved by the jettisoning of what the divisive 8th installment introduced, while those irked by The Force Awakens nostalgia bait will likely be irritated by Episode 9's recycling of familiar beats and plentiful fan service. The Rise of Skywalker labors incredibly hard to check all the boxes, and ultimately that makes the film a clunky and convoluted conclusion to this beloved saga. The Rise of Skywalker's overall execution is as enthusiastic as it is erratic, with a story full of plot holes large enough to fly a Star Destroyer through. It lacks nerve, relying instead on nostalgic fan service to try and make the ride as comfortable as possible for the masses. The movie also uses its epic scale and breathless speed in the hopes that you don't dwell on the details of its convoluted storytelling and awkward retconning. While Finn and Poe act as the film's heroic men of action, the story strains to establish them along with Rey as a close-knit trio on par with Luke, Han, and Leia, when the reality is the characters have spent more time apart than together. Thus, much of the development of their relationship has happened off-screen between the end of The Last Jedi and the beginning of this film, so the stakes between them here aren't especially well earned. Clearly, Abrams and Last Jedi director Rian Johnson had very different ideas about the direction and meaning of this trilogy, and The Rise of Skywalker suffers for that. Its overall messaging is muddled, and lack of a unified vision in getting these final 3 episodes from point A to C is obvious. A film very palpably made from a place of fear of disappointing the audience, and that anxiety fuels a lot of the story's curious creative choices and unwieldy execution, particularly in the film's closing act. Who need for there to be some consistency and logic to the story in this elaborately detailed fictional galaxy, there will likely be the bittersweet pang of accepting that this long-running saga couldn't quite stick the landing.
Straight into the dirty and the nasty, and with The Rise of Skywalker, I did come out slightly disappointed. What I think the biggest problem with The Rise of Skywalker for me is that it's trying to move the story forward and close it, while at the same time all throughout the movie you're working backwards to retcon everything that The Last Jedi was. I hate to be that kind of guy, but The Rise of Skywalker almost feels like the biggest FU to Rian Johnson and The Last Jedi. There are definitely new abilities they throw in there which are questionable and raise some questions of like, they can do this now? That's a new thing they can do? The way they decide to conclude this chapter, it doesn't feel earned to me. It feels very rushed. Oh, this is happening now, and then this is how we're gonna close it. And with that rush and trying to close things off and get everyone in a happy ending, because who knows if we'll ever see these characters again, some of the emotions and characters who perish, or characters who go off, or characters we might not see again, the emotion isn't there and it doesn't feel earned. Just a lot of this movie doesn't feel earned for such the bold risks they're taking. And they have these moments on screen where maybe if it was done right, I am supposed to cry. I'm supposed to feel so much joy and sadness at the same time for what is going on screen, when more it just feels like this was a choice. This is something that happened. And for a conclusion, there's a lot of stuff unanswered. There's just more questions to be like, well, why is this happening? And you didn't answer what happened here. And then this right here. It's kind of one of those films where the more you think about it, the more you can make yourself dislike it. It's a handful of nitpicks that when you pile them all up together, it feels like a mess of a movie.
I did not like this movie.
By the way, I just want to note the brilliance of the fact that I went on some long diatribe about like filmmaking and opposites and metaphors, and you're like, yeah, didn't like it. Did not care for the movie.
I didn't care for it for all of those reasons that you just said. With respect to the fact, I know that particularly JJ, as they're making the rounds promoting this movie, they have to say, and JJ said, like, well, you know, these stories seem so different, but in actuality, you know, Ryan and I talked and we talked about, you know, getting his story to where I'm sorry.
No, you
There is no, watching these two films, there is absolutely no way in my mind that these two movies could ever have in any way been intended to lead into one another or to follow each other.
They're an argument.
They are completely opposite. They are diametrically opposed to each other, and not diametrically opposed in the way that I get the argument, and I agree to it somewhat with the fact that, you know, the whole Kill of the Past thing is Kylo Ren's thing in Last Jedi, and the movie itself may not be making that statement. I don't mean diametrically opposed in that way.
I think that movie is absolutely making that statement, but let's not review that movie.
Good God, I am not going to relitigate Last Jedi. I swear to God, I can't do it. What I'm saying is that it's not in the sense of this movie is an answer to the previous film, and the previous film set things up in this movie no, this movie is a complete refutation to the stated philosophy of the last film. In my opinion, this is the worst script for any Star Wars movie ever. This trilogy showed a complete lack of overall creative direction, in the sense that now I looking back now from The Force Awakens to Last Jedi to now this movie, there seems to have been absolutely no roadmap as to what these movies were going to be, where they were going to go, what they were going to be tonally, and it shows. And this movie was a mess. For me, it was all over the place. The script, which he co-wrote, also, I think, leans into his worst instincts as a filmmaker. My least favorite side of J.J. Abrams, which is this idea that everything's a mystery and storytelling is puzzle solving. I mean, within the first 5 minutes of this movie, there's a little mystery box that's open.
Oh, yeah.
And then there are like 8 things. This actually layers a few of my least favorite types of storytelling. One of them is this was happening all the time in the background, but nobody knew, and everyone knew, but no one said anything. The second one is you got to get the thing to get the thing to find the thing to find the guy to get the thing to go to the place.
I believe that we call that a MacGuffin Russian doll.
Yes, this was 8 Russian dolls worth of 15 MacGuffins that take up half the runtime. And when you get there, usually they don't even matter. To me, that's time wasting. When you should be really kicking. This is the culmination of a 9-episode, 40+ year saga, and you're wasting time going on errands to find things that some of them it's ultimately doesn't matter. It's just an excuse to get characters to go places. Like that is storytelling, but it's not very good storytelling in my mind. I did not feel satisfied as a fan, to be honest. I felt pandered to. Like it's mocking us.
Like it's mocking us because it is checking internet boxes. It's like checking internet complaints about things that we didn't see or that weren't resolved throughout the course of these 9 movies.
Yeah.
And it's sort of checking them off a list in an almost perfunctory way.
I felt nothing. This was for me the worst case possibility in my head of what this movie could be.
Let me just say that if you haven't already spent money on the ticket for this film, My advice would be, if you were a friend of mine or a family member, I'd be saying, don't spend any extra money on it. Wait until it becomes available in a format or a place where you don't have to pay extra to see it. So once it turns up on Disney Plus, for example, and you've already paid the streaming fee for a year, so you're not paying anything extra, that's when I would watch this film. It is not a film that I would suggest wasting money on, that you could better spend on something else. In a nutshell, I would say that this film is a mess. All of the leaks that you've heard are true, and then some. It's a mess. The writing in this film is atrocious. And really, for my mind, this film has two different modes that it is constantly shifting between in the storytelling. The first mode is unearned moments that lack proper build-up, that have not been properly earned, whether that's in this film itself or in the overall trilogy. There's lots of those. And if you're not seeing those on screen, then you are seeing a lot of moments that are just unexplained. There's these big question marks. You're watching things happen and you are thinking to yourself, why is that happening? You've got this whole fleet of Sith Star Destroyers. Where did the crews, the pilots, and everyone else come from to pilot these things like so quickly? Were they all underground too? How did they get them together so quickly if they weren't all underground? There's so much that just doesn't make sense. For example, that's one example. And it's not just one or two of those moments like we've seen in previous films. There are so many of them, and this film just basically feels like a constant, really fast moving, because it is a roller coaster. Those who have described it as being like a video game plot, it is kind of like that. It's a what would you call it? It's almost like Mary Sue Fury Road. Like the Mad Max, it's just sort of a chase from woe to go to try and achieve a target, get the MacGuffin, save the day, that kind of thing. And so it is sort of very fast paced, but it's shifting constantly really from those two different modes, unearned moments and unexplained moments. And there's lots of other stuff around that is just atrocious.
I'll go first in saying that I left the film conflicted. I think that there are some good things that they tried to do in the film, and I think they also faced a number of really large obstacles in trying to button up every storyline that had been started, not just in The Force Awakens, but also tried to be continued in The Last Jedi. So there was a lot of material to try to juggle, and when they tried to add buttons to all of those storylines and make every fan satisfied by what happened, I think they struggled a little bit with that.
There is some good here. It's not a all bad movie. However, I gotta say, if it's not clear from my face, I have a heavy heart right now, because there are certain choices that this movie makes that I just don't really agree with. I don't think it was the proper direction to take in this franchise. I think there's a lot of stuff that I did really like that was especially done in the sequel trilogy that has been built up to now that this movie kind of ignores in a really bad way, just because I think some of the stuff that they really built up over The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi was really solid. I'm a big Last Jedi fan, put that on the record. And there was a lot of this that just felt hollow and empty, and like the fan service stuff didn't click with me, and it's just I'm disappointed.
Hollow is the word that you use that I think hits me the most, and I'm not going to use the word disappointed.
I will.
Hey guys, John here. Okay, so I am at the after party, or standing just outside of the after party for the premiere of Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. Just saw it, just walked out. Here's my quick first reaction to it. I think this is a movie that a lot of people are going to like. It's got some big highlight moments. JJ went for some stuff that's very different and very bold, and I applaud him for it. Like I said, I think a lot of people are going to really like this movie. Unfortunately, I'm not one of them. I gotta say, I don't ever remember walking out of a Star Wars movie as disappointed as I was in this one.
I like Last Jedi. And I know everybody cries, no, how can you like Last Jedi? Sorry, suck it. I like Last Jedi. So now we come into Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. I think this is a movie that a lot of people are gonna like. However, as I said on my social media postings last night, unfortunately, I'm not one of them. One of the things you can tell about watching this movie is that JJ was really trying to bridge the gap in the Star Wars fandom and try to give something that everybody would like. And if you understand how much of a toxic cesspool the Star Wars fandom has been the last few years, then you know that that task is a Herculean thing to try to do. I just got to be honest with you and say it did not work for me. Not because of the choices he made, not because of any of that. You can go in any sort of story direction, whether it's a story direction I wanted you to go in, which we've seen, or whether it's going in a story direction I didn't want them to go in, which can still work out great. None of that's important. To me, it's just the execution of it didn't work. And I personally walked out of Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker disappointed. My job is simply to sit here in front of this stupid camera with my stupid face and tell you with my stupid voice what my honest opinion was.
Hello, everyone. I am your favorite Russian bot. I'm Candace, aka Geeky Candy. So now we have good old Brian Lowry here bringing us his review, his great critical review of The Rise of Skywalker. So just right off the bat, just like he did in the last article, he starts talking about not The Rise of Skywalker, but rather The Last Jedi. Here he says, like a tremor in the Force, the division stirred by The Last Jedi created fiction in the Star Wars universe. Yes, friction. Yes, a divide, because Rian Johnson is an asshole. The Rise of Skywalker feels like a welcome course correction, featuring sequences and references that more cynical minds, the Phantom Menace, perhaps, will dismiss as fan service, but which derive emotion and power precisely from the bond and investment the audience has forged, not just with this permutation on the story, but all of it going back to the original trilogy. How about that tap dancing right there? That's some serious tap dancing. If there's a quibble, it's mostly in the first 45 minutes or so, as the movie sets up its central challenge, then essentially careens from one crisis to the next in a fashion that comes across as a little too willy-nilly in its galaxy-hopping exploits. So basically you're saying that the entire plot line, the main central challenge, is an issue. Just tossing that in there, really tiny, just burying it in the article. I'd like to know this. You say there's a quibble in this movie, as you call it, saying that you have an issue with how it sets up its central challenge. We call that the main plot line. And if you're telling me that they have a problem setting up the main plot line and going from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next without anything, no connective tissue, putting it all together, that's pretty much what we've been talking about for the last, year or so, ever since we started finding out about what this movie was going to be about, what they were planning to do. This is literally what we were saying, and you have the balls to repeat it after that hit piece last week? Very interesting, Mr. Lowry. Very interesting, and this is why I give you the award for Shill of the Week. Faced with that task, and clearly mindful of the enormity of it, Abrams has made a Star Wars movie aimed at the people who love it best. That's not you and me, apparently. Aimed at the people who love it best. Now, that's important to keep in mind for the next sentence where he says, The Rise of Skywalker isn't perfect, but seen that way by the people who love it best, it more than rises to the occasion. So people who love it best, Brian Lowry, who would that be? Surely it can't be the kids, even though Freddie Prinze says, it's for kids, bruh. It's for kids, dude. No, it's not for kids. Check out the Swedish rating system. They even said the issues with Corpse Palpatine alone would not recommend it for kids 11 and under. Disney, what are you doing? You are a family channel. You are a family company. Your marketing is stupid right now. You are eliminating most of your target audience by getting rid of the 11 and under gap with all this random stuff you have to throw in there to try to please certain portions of the fandom. It's so ridiculous. Concentrate on the storyline. Let that be your reason to move forward with the movie. Not that you need to put in so many little pieces of things to make sure this group of people and this group of people and this group of people are all happy. Because you know what? You're leaving out the biggest group of all, the real fans. And obviously that's going to show with your opening week.
Look, I went into this movie excited. As the only critic in the screening who screamed in joy when the opening titles came on screen. I wanted to like this movie. Sadly, he took it too far. He took it way too far. He was overcompensating so much for The Last Jedi that he steered into this weird fan film level fan service, trying to overcompensate for the mistakes that he clearly thinks The Last Jedi made. I mean, there's a couple moments in this film, again, no spoilers, I'm not going to get into spoilers here. There's a couple moments in the film where it just felt like a big middle finger to Last Jedi. It is just barreling at full speed as if he has a lot to make up, as if he just knows, oh my God, we screwed up. Disney's mad. Kathleen Kennedy's mad. Bob Iger's mad. Everybody's mad. We got to sell toys. We got to fix Star Wars. All right, I'm just going to try and do it. Don't get me started on how the Force works. After this movie, I have no clue. I have no clue how the Force works. It's backpedaling so hard from Last Jedi. It's just noticeable. It's not only just at a new fast sprint, but he's just trying to right so many wrongs and retcon the steps that Rian Johnson did. He's trying to sprint so hard to sort of his own version of sort of Star Wars Endgame at the end of this movie that nothing really pays off for me because he rushed through it all. I can't even explain to you how or why or what was exactly happening with these MacGuffins, or how it sort of mattered. Look, he's just overcompensating for Last Jedi so much. He ups the fan service up by 100. They even bring in sort of the Knights of Ren. Here I have an image of them as I'm talking about it. The Knights of Ren, sort of these things, they're characters they're teasing, like, oh, cool, and they've talked about. They do nothing. They just are there to look cool, and I feel like JJ's like, yeah, that'd be cool. Let's get him, have some cronies hanging around. But they really serve no purpose. And a lot of this movie, a lot of the stuff in it just serves no purpose. And that's where it's just really frustrating. And as we dissect it, which we will, people will dissect this film like crazy and we'll be debating it. And a lot of people will not like this film. As I wrap this up, I'm disappointed by it. I'm sadly disappointed by it. It tilted. He's trying to retcon so much that it tilted too far. The scales tipped in the other direction, where now it's just like, fans, does this work? Is this what you wanted? See, look what I did. I did that and did this and cool, right? Oh, did you hear him say that? And it didn't work for me. It didn't work for me because he was just trying so hard, and it shows that it wasn't like, oh, good job. It felt more like, dude, slow down. Just, what are you doing? We didn't need all those MacGuffins. Just figure out a cool plot. And get the characters there. There's all of these years of Star Wars, and our finale is left with finding objects and then sort of learning the secret of things. Very disappointing from a plot perspective. And it just shows that Disney was rushing them and that J.J. Abrams was doing the best he could. He's admitted now that he was writing on set, changing things as they went. That's not usually a good sign. And it just shows why this trilogy is a letdown, because there was no grand plan.
How did we get here? What happened? Like, what happened to Star Wars? What happened? Where are we? What weird alternate dimension am I in? So Star Wars Episode 9 is a 4-hour movie they crushed into 2.5 hours because it feels like this movie probably should have been a lot longer. They're going for the member berry soup right there. Whenever they can, you feel like they're just going to be like, oh, remember this? I remember. Remember that? I remember. They're not membering enough, Williams. Pick it up. There's not a lot I liked in this movie, to be honest with you. I know. Rise of Skywalker is damage control for The Last Jedi, so it's really hard to tell where the damage control ends and the actual vision of the movie they wanted to make begins. I'm not just talking about the fact they're like, Snoke's dead, shit, all right, let's bring in Palpatine. Which I know they or J.J. Abrams have said, no, that was the plan from the beginning to bring Palpatine in. Bullshit. There are a couple of bits of dialogue in here, I was like, we had different information a couple years ago. Doesn't help that there's not a lot of intrigue at all. I mean, anytime there could be intrigue, it's like someone pops into frame to explain something. It's like, what would they need with that? Oh, just popping into frame to tell you that's what it is. Okay, let's go do the thing then. But what should we do? You should go to that planet. Go there. All right, now we know. It's like a scavenger hunt video game plot. All right, we have to go to this planet. Who are we looking for? We're looking for this person. This person's like, hey, I'm that person. But I don't actually have the thing you're looking for. That person might. All right, let's go over there. All right, I need a thing. Yeah, you need a thing, but you need me to get the thing to get you the thing. It's just an unraveling of 90s video game plot. You all can't wait for this to end too, huh? Sweet. She does some stuff in here where you're like, where did you learn that? How how. I'm not talking like swinging a lightsaber and she's good at fighting or something. I'm talking fucking how. It's like this movie, or at least the third act, was made by someone who likes Star Wars-ish things, but doesn't really know the Star Wars lore. There are rules in Star Wars. I felt nothing in the movie. I was watching it and I'm like, it feels like a sci-fi movie. It just feels like another sci-fi movie, which is never what Star Wars ever felt like. I'm not gonna remember Rise of Skywalker in T-minus 1 day. Yep, already forgot.
The Rise of Skywalker. Now, in this movie, there is plenty of Mary Sue. Okay? Mary Sue moments, ass pull moments, saying to yourself, oh, when you're thinking of this, they're like, oh, hey, where'd you get that from? I pulled out my ass. This might work, though. Yeah, you know what? It might work. Put it in the movie. In this movie, when certain things happen, I flipped out. There was one part where I was like, yeah, fucking right. Yeah, alright. Okay. Yeah. Alright. Okay. There was another part of the movie that was like, get the fuck out. Oh my God. Okay. Right. Right. Okay. Mm-hmm. Right. Alright. There's another part where I was like, yeah, right, man. Come on. This is stupid. You know, certain parts I just called. I just knew it, figured certain things out. I'm going to tell you that the majority of the leaks are true. And it makes me wonder if 100% of them are true, because maybe there were scenes left out. Because a certain person isn't in this movie that everyone was saying is going to be there. Wasn't there. But I get a feeling he was. And it was cut. If you loved this movie like you loved The Last Jedi, woohoo! For you! Everything that got a rise out of me, no pun intended, was something bad. This is what I heard. It was like, Randy Watson. Ha! Give it up for Randy Watson. That's what it was like. You heard a couple of people clap. Faint ass claps. Kind of like, okay, we don't want to keep clapping because ain't nobody else clapping. Sorry. I am going to give The Rise of Skywalker 1 out of 5 woos. Okay? For those of you that don't know, if I was Stuckman, it'd be an F. If it were Jeremy Johns, this is dog shit. Okay? It's 1 star if you're on the star system. Okay? No pun intended. I can't believe they did what they did.
Yeah, I'm kind of right in line with you.
So you can see Star Wars fans, movie critics, all kinds of different opinions, and it doesn't look pretty, now does it? We told you so. We have been telling you that this is screwed up, that Disney is destroying Star Wars, that they're not listening to the fans, and we got all this hate. You just hate women, you don't want diversity, you're a man baby, you're a racist. No, we just wanted good stories, because myself, like any real Star Wars fan, doesn't care if you're purple or orange, tall or small, wide or thin, a robot, an alien, or just a white dude that grew up on a moisture farm and wanted to save the galaxy. What we cared about was your character and the story developed around these characters. Solid story writing. Let's see what Twitter has to say. Sean O'Connell, December 17th. No matter how you feel about the individual movies, the new Star Wars trilogy that concludes with The Rise of Skywalker is the weirdest trilogy of films I've seen in my lifetime. None of them fit, and they all seem to actively dislike each other. Truly head-scratchingly bizarre. No, it's not that bizarre. Disney didn't plan a damn thing. They were winging the entire trilogy and thought they were just gonna, fly by the seat of their pants and it would just work out because we're Disney and we'll just throw a bunch of money at it and everybody will gobble it up and pay for it because we're Disney. They'll buy the toys. They'll buy the movies. It doesn't matter if we screw over Luke Skywalker and 42 years of history. It won't matter a damn. We can just do whatever we want. Well, apparently Disney, you can't. Sean O'Connell, 11 hours ago. Rise of Skywalker is a frantic, slick, but narrative limp end to the current Star Wars saga. Don't worry, we'll undoubtedly get more, and I'm sure we will get some more dumpster fires, because they're not going to just end Star Wars, they're going to keep trying to milk the money. While action-packed, the poor movie can't overcome a complete lack of storytelling direction for this trilogy. Panders instead of inspires. This I wrote 7 hours ago. Now let's take a quick look at this. The Rise of Skywalker review. Palpatine returns, Kylo dies, Rey is the bestest ever, they fly now, lesbians kiss, Mary, Joseph, and Baby Yoda. The end. And that's the Rise of Skywalker, folks. Now, I want to be fair, and I want to point out my words before people want to judge what I've said here. And I also want you to, first, imagine that you've never seen a Star Wars film in your life, okay? We're all coming fresh, and this is a brand new movie. Or if you like, you could say, well, 1 through 6 don't exist. It's just the Disney train wreck trilogy. Okay, so we don't have Anakin and Yoda and Lucas and all the stories and lore. It's just Disney. And furthermore, you could even isolate just this movie. So now let's listen to my review. Palpatine returns. Okay, well, we don't know who he is, but he must be important because he returns. Fine. Kylo dies. Well, Kylo, we presume, must be a protagonist. Maybe he's the bad guy because he dies. So, okay, that makes sense. Rey is the bestest ever. All right, so we would assume that Kylo's the antagonist and Rey is the protagonist because she's the bestest ever. They fly now. Okay, so apparently some of the heroes, or maybe villains, now fly, which apparently they didn't in the past. Okay, well, that sounds cool. Lesbians kiss. All right, well, personally, I don't really give a damn. Furthermore, I don't know a straight man on this earth that has any problem seeing two women kiss. So it's not me being anti-women. I could really care less if women are kissing. Mary, Joseph, and the baby Yoda. Okay, I'm not religious at all, but I'm not attacking anyone that is religious or believes in the Bible or Mary and Joseph or Jesus or what have you. Now, here's where the problem occurs, is that Star Wars is 42 years old and has a story, and it has lore, and it has history. So now let's reread my review. Palpatine, the Emperor that clearly died, that the creator of this entire franchise has said died, is back for no apparent reason, okay? Kylo dies, well, we all kind of assumed that was going to happen. Big deal. Rey is the bestest ever. Well, she has no training, she has no story, she has no nothing. Nobody cares about her, and they've made her the greatest thing ever in a franchise that has a ton of history. For no other apparent reason than she's female and women have to embarrass all men in Star Wars now because it wasn't good enough that millions of girls around the world loved Luke Skywalker. Kathleen Kennedy and Disney, with their political social justice agendas, just had to make Rey the bestest ever. They fly now. Since 1980, they have been flying. Jetpacks are nothing new. Empire Strikes Back, Boba Fett, they flew then. Lesbians kiss. Again, no straight man's gonna care, and the LGBTQ community isn't gonna care. The point is that Star Wars isn't a love story. It's not about equality politics. It's not about how many women or how many aliens or if this person loves that person. It's a space odyssey. It's an adventure. It has to do with good and evil, dark and light, heroes and villains. It has nothing to do with making out or sending messages. it's a space odyssey. So lesbians, or really anybody kissing, is out of place. Yes, Leia kissed Luke and Han, but it was a brief moment. It had context, and they were a gang. They were around each other, and they loved each other. They established those characters, they established that story, and they had a bond. And we went on a journey with the three of them, and Chewie, and R2, and Lando, and 3PO, and Jabba, and Boba, and all these characters. We loved them. We were a part of them. They were part of us. So it made sense for Leia to fall in love with Han, and they kiss. They end up having children together. But to just throw in random kisses to prove a point or to represent certain genres or ethnicities or send a message has no place in Star Wars, because Star Wars is not about that. Star Wars is about heroes and villains in space. To further this lesbians kiss point, at the end of the movie, a bunch of them are celebrating. Yay, we beat the Emperor. Well, Rey is the greatest and she saved everybody because nobody else does anything. It's Super Mary Sue Rey. A bunch of people are celebrating, hugging, and whatever, and no one else is kissing. But in the background, there's two women, presumably lesbians, that kiss. So again, none of us really give a damn or have a problem with the heroes of the movie celebrating and sharing an embrace or sharing a kiss. But when no one else is kissing and you make it a point to put the two lesbians in the background just so that you could say, see, we represented LGBTQ. Really, the LGBTQ community should be offended because they're pandering to you now. It's not even like a real representation. It's a, see, here's our token gay kiss. Represent Mary, Joseph, and Baby Yoda. Luke and Leia, the true, actual Skywalkers, bow down to the mighty Rey. You're the whole reason of our existence. You're every Jedi, and we love you bestest ever, Rey, Mary, Sue. Their ghosts come out, and Luke the hermit, who didn't give a damn, and Leia, the Mary Poppins that floats through space, bow down to Mary Rey, and they're on Tatooine, which Leia's never even been on Tatooine and has no business being on Tatooine, and Rey has no business being on Tatooine, and they're on Tatooine. And their Force Ghosts show up to congratulate the mighty Rey, who's done absolutely nothing, was handed everything, and is just entitled in real life and in this movie.
Once and for all, the greatest Star Wars character in the history of Star Wars, period, is, of course...
Oh, well, I'll go with Rey, because you know what? I'm in this film, and I play Rey. So I'll say Rey.
And Baby Yoda, well, you know, Baby Yoda, he's Baby Jesus, basically. We all love him. So it makes perfect sense that he's with Mary and Joseph in this meme. So this isn't really to offend anybody or poke at anybody. It's just the honest truth of what the Rise of Skywalker is. Again, Palpatine returns for no reason. Kylo dies. Well, we knew that was going to happen. Rey, well, yep, we all know she's the best. They fly now. Well, apparently Disney and everybody in the movie figured that out, but we all knew it back in 1980. Lesbians kiss just to pander to the gay community, and Mary Joseph and the Baby Yoda. If you would like to see my memes here, by all means, please follow me on NotMyStarWars on Twitter. Baby Yoda is looking for a good Star Wars movie to watch, and he can't seem to find one. George Lucas Betrayed by Kathleen Kennedy and Bob Iger. Characters old and new were poorly written and wasted. Fans were spat on by Disney creatives and the show media. A Palpatine stamps triumphant before binary sunset. Why would anyone give Disney their money for TROS? Disney has literally destroyed the Skywalkers and the Skywalker story, played you by calling it The Rise of Skywalker and using the property, your nostalgia, your memories, throwing in old characters and ships and sounds and music, and it's really Empress Palpatine Rey is the chosen one and now has Luke's dual sunset. Disney has just evaporated Star Wars and handed it all to Rey because the Force is female, I guess. The Quartering. Disney killed Star Wars. Well, enough said. Dave Schilling. Having seen The Rise of Skywalker, I can safely say this last Star Wars trilogy is the most schizophrenic, unsatisfying major trilogy of all time. And this comes from someone who liked the first two movies. I can't agree with the first two movies, but he himself liked the first two movies and tells you that this is schizophrenic and unsatisfying. I left the theater feeling completely numb to 70% of what happened. Next time, maybe Lucasfilm should have a plan. That might have prevented this movie from feeling like a kid making up a ridiculous story with a chest full of Star Wars toys. You can see there's another reference to the characters looking like they're action figures put into place. And that Disney should have a plan, because clearly they had no plan. And it's really a shame, a lost opportunity to really give the fans something beautiful. And it's also ironic because as a business, and as a business decision, Disney screwed themselves out of millions, potentially billions of dollars, because they wanted to go and just create their own new Star Wars. Now, what would have been smart is keep Luke like he was, pick up from where it was. He's a Jedi Master. Finish the 3 movies, the story of Skywalker. Just finish it out. Let the hero be. Let everyone have their last taste of the original Star Wars. All the old fans would have been happy. You use George Lucas's outline, you finish out and round out the 9 episodes that we've known. It's 9 episodes since 1977. You round out the entire story, finish off the Skywalkers properly, give them a proper ending. Anakin, Luke, Yoda, Luke and Leia reunited, Lando, Chewie, the droids. And then once you finish the Skywalker story properly, then you go on and make whatever you want, Disney. We have no problem. Let me make this clear. We have never had a problem with new characters and new stories. On the contrary, we would have wanted that after the final trilogy was closed and finished, after the original story was nicely tied in a knot. Then by all means, make Rey and all the characters and all the stories. You could have gotten real elaborate with Rey and Poe. Finn to me is no big deal, but a lot of people like Finn. A lot of people wanted a Finn story. You could have developed so much with Finn, whether he was the next chosen one or the Jedi, or it's just a redemption story of a First Order trooper now becoming a rebel, whatever. You could have done a million things. You should have just listened to the fans and put your ego aside and finished the Skywalker story. But instead, you took it upon yourself to put ego and stamp out the entire old trilogies because you want to now put in children's heads. You want it to get on it as fast as possible so that from now on, people have it in their minds that Star Wars is Disney, that there was no George Lucas, it was the mouse, that Mickey Mouse created this grand Star Wars, and all hail Disney. Guess what? It sure is blowing up in your faces, isn't it? You should have respected the franchise, and now there's no turning back and fixing this. And this is going to affect the future of Star Wars and Disney. This is accurate. It's like the movie itself is so desperate to be liked that it will do or say anything to achieve that reaction. I felt as though it was drunkenly networking with me at a party. Rise of Skywalker is bananas. It's like a big submarine sandwich, but the only ingredients are banana peppers, and it's being served to you on an exploding spaceship, and everyone is yelling. Does that sound like a good film to you guys? After Rise of Skywalker, I think I need to watch a really good Star Trek episode to cleanse myself. I say let's do a makeover. Want to know the worst thing? Disney decimated the canonical nature of the extended universe for this trilogy. Hundreds of fantastic books, comics, games, etc. were basically done away for this. And for what? For a film that is essentially an EU film, but much worse. Exactly. They had all the content and they decided to just go ahead and make something new. But hey, Rey is practically perfect in every way. So I hope it was worth it, Disney. And by the way, as I mentioned here, quick, go watch all the old Star Wars movies before Disney does a Mandela effect and all the movies feature Mary Sue. Okay? So you don't want to turn around in 6 months and thought that you remembered Jabba the Hutt or Cloud City or the pod races or Luke Skywalker. You might turn around and pop in your videotapes and see that the entire Star Wars story is about Rey. So watch them while you can, because Disney's doing their best to make sure that Star Wars as we knew it does not exist. Scott Mendelson. At worst, I expected The Rise of Skywalker to be a well-made movie that I didn't like or whose story choices I disagreed with. I was not expecting a genuinely bad movie with video game plotting, thin characters, weak action, and endless exposition of no consequence. Heartbreaking. Again, I can't stress that this guy loves Disney, that is the shill of shills, that has defended Disney and The Last Jedi and Disney Star Wars to the end. And he's at the point where I can't lie anymore, I can't take it anymore. It's heartbreaking. And if his heart is broken, then that's telling you that it's really bad. December 19, 2019. Box Office Mojo. Friday AM update. Disney Star Wars: A Rise of Skywalker delivered $40 million from Thursday evening's previews. Soaring is the 5th largest preview gross ever. Performance comes in $5 million behind the $45 million preview for Last Jedi, which went on to deliver $220 million 3-day domestic debut. Force Awakens, $57 million Thursday. Friday gross, $119. The weekend is $247.9, which is the big number we're looking for. Last Jedi, $45 million Thursday, $104 Friday, and then $220 over that weekend. Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker flops in China, December 20th. Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker is a theatrical bomb in China, December 20th. Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker steps out with a $59 million plus through Thursday overseas. Force still weak in China. So $59 million all over the world outside of United States. But yet China still doesn't do well. China has never been a big fan of Star Wars movies, but it's the largest market with such a huge population. So it should still be getting sales, but it just will not take off in China. December 20th. Variety. All those articles are pretty much referring to this Variety article. So Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker flops in China on Friday debut, December 20th. On Friday, in its first official sessions in Chinese theaters, the film was barely crawling. By 8 p.m. local time, The Rise of Skywalker had earned just $2.2 million. According to multiple data tracking services, it stood in 4th place behind 3 Chinese titles. Number 9 of the 42-year-old Star Wars made $2 million in China that has a massive market. Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker bombs in China with lowest opening of the new trilogy, December 20th. Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker is on track for disappointing sales in China, one of the world's largest movie markets. According to sales figures from preview nights, the final chapter in the trilogy could make less than any Star Wars trilogy movie to date. THR reports that The Rise of Skywalker earned just $1.6 million on opening night, which placed the Star Wars movie in a distant 4th place of movies in China. If those numbers continue, the film is forecasted to make $17.8 million on opening weekend. This would trail The Last Jedi's $42.5 million and The Force Awakens' $124 million. Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker is expected to flop at the box office in China, December 20th. The movie had earned $2.2 million in the region by 8 p.m. local time on Friday, according to Variety, and was trailing behind 3 Chinese movies. The Chinese ticket service Maoyan is projecting The Rise of Skywalker to earn just $18 million during its theatrical run in China. In other words, its whole time in China, which would probably be a week or two because they just don't do well there anyways, is only going to make $18 million. That's like 18 cents to a Star Wars movie. Forbes, Scotty, our boy. Box office: Rise of Skywalker bombs in China to continue 2019's most troubling trend. Following a $5.87 million gross in its first 2 days in China, Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker probably won't top $20 million in the biggest overseas market on Earth. This continues the country's almost comical indifference to the franchise. To be fair, China is not the best market for Star Wars, but when you do law of averages and you have so many people, such a huge film fanaticism and box office sales, it's the biggest market overseas, and it can't manage to make $5 million. Star Wars Episode 9, just a disaster. Updated look at Metacritic. As of today, it's at 54 with 59 critics. And Rotten Tomatoes is at 57, so it has dropped 1 or 2%. The lowest I had seen it was at 52 when it first started getting reviews. The audience score has now shown up. This is very suspect for several reasons. Number one, there's no way that critics and everyone on YouTube and internet and everywhere is telling you how bad this movie is. These are people that are paid. These are people that are just not grasping reality and not wanting to look themselves in the mirror and have to admit that Star Wars is now trash. And it is also, Rotten Tomatoes is known for doing questionable things. There's 18,000 ratings. Every Star Wars movie has at least 200,000. So Rotten Tomatoes is obviously not releasing all of the reviews yet. And as they're controlling that, they're also controlling which ones are coming out. In other words, the positive ones and not the negative ones. Overall, on this Monday, we're going to see what's what with Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker. When we get this closing of the opening weekend official numbers, that's when everybody's going to really see what it is. Regardless of critic scores or opinions or whatever, we're going to see by the numbers how much of a flop this movie is. But also, if not by Monday, certainly within time, weeks, months, these reviews are going to come out and this 86 is going to fall real hard. There's no way that's going to hold. This is probably going to be 60, 70 at best. There's everybody out here dislikes this film. Do I come across one or two people that say, yeah, I loved it? Sure, and that's okay. If you love this movie, great. But the reality is that if you look anywhere, 90% of people are saying that this is disgusting.
The Rise of Skywalker is the #1 movie in the world.
So that's where we're at, folks. Star Wars has been officially derailed and destroyed. There's no turning back, changing it. The history is what it is. Me personally, Star Wars ended at episode 6. I will not acknowledge the existence of Disney's trilogy. It's not canon. It does not exist. And I hope that the rest of you will join in with me on doing so. I can only hope that for some reason, Lucas regains the control of Star Wars. It probably won't happen, but we can never say never. Well, that's where we're at. It's a shame, but this is what it's come to. Star Wars is just completely poof. Please like, subscribe, comment, and may the Force be with you.